Boris Johnson says he may have to tighten the rules on face coverings in England, encouraging their use in confined spaces like shops. At the moment, they're only mandatory on public transport, but the Prime Minister says the scientific advice on masks has shifted. Speaking during an online question and answer session at Downing Street, he also urged people to go back to work if they can, instead of working from home. Face coverings became mandatory in shops in Scotland today, as well as on public transport, with the First Minister Nicola Sturgeon saying it's an important public health initiative. Our science editor David Shukman has our top story.
The message is obvious when the Prime Minister is pictured in a mask. It means you can expect new rules in England for where you have to cover your face, no longer just on public transport.
We need to be stricter in insisting that people wear face coverings in confined places. We're looking at ways of making sure that people really do really do have face coverings in shops, for instance, where there is a risk of transmission.
Hello. The pressure has been building for a change. The Chancellor Rishi Sunak was widely criticised for not covering his face earlier in the week at this photo opportunity. And Scotland is already going further than the rest of the UK by requiring masks to be worn in shops right now.
I think it reminds people that we need to be taking precautions.
I think it's a good thing because it protects people.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Anything that stops this virus is a good idea.
The reason is that anyone infected can spread the virus with coughs, sneezes, or even by speaking loudly. The risk is greatest indoors, especially in crowded spaces with bad ventilation. That's where scientists say that face coverings can make a difference.
Those droplets are caught by the mask. And so most of the droplets then don't go on to infect other people around me. Now, some of the droplets might escape through the sides of the mask, but then they would fall down to the area around me.
The latest figures show that masks now have to be worn everywhere in public in as many as 71 different countries. They are becoming more widely accepted. It's estimated that in Italy, 80% of people now wear them. In the US, 70%, and in Spain, 65%. While in the UK, the figure is 25%, though that may now be a bit higher since that data was gathered. And a new voice has entered the debate, with tourist destinations struggling, like the almost empty Amalfi Coast in Italy. The travel industry now says that face coverings should be mandatory, whatever different governments may think about that.
The use of face masks should not be political. There should not be stigma around it. It is just the way we go forward to be able to move around freely while protecting others and also protecting ourselves.
It's a big step to order face coverings to be worn beyond public transport. But as we learn more about how easily the virus can spread, masks are becoming part of the new normal in more aspects of our lives. David Shukman, BBC News.
Well, the number of people reported to have died after testing positive for coronavirus was 48 in the past 24-hour period. That takes the total number of deaths across the UK to 44,650. Well, our political correspondent Alex Forsyth is at Westminster Forest this evening. Alex, there does seem to have been a marked change in tone from the government and the Prime Minister today.
Yeah, well, the public messaging has changed as we've moved through various phases of this pandemic. And we did have that very clear indication from government today that they were looking at much stricter rules around face coverings in public. And we also heard from Boris Johnson that he now wants people to start going back to work. Now, the official guidance has been, and Number 10 says it still remains, that people should work from home where they can. But during that public Q&A session, recorded and broadcast by Downing Street, Boris Johnson said everybody's taken the stay at home if you can. I think we should now sort of say, well, go back to work if you can. He said he thinks people should try to start living normally, to have the confidence to go to shops and restaurants. And I think that is what's really behind all of this, the deep-rooted fear about the toll this virus is taking on the economy. In the week, we heard the government's plans to protect jobs. We also heard from Boots and John Lewis about significant cuts in those sectors. And so that's why we're hearing a change in tone, a shift about go out safely if you can, go back to work safely if you you can. The government's stressing it wants people to follow guidelines, but at this crucial point of the pandemic, their messaging has to be not only clear, that is really important, but the danger for the government is that it becomes confused.
OK, Alex, thank you. Alex Forsyth there at Westminster.